The sound of forks and glasses filled the expensive New York restaurant. Chandeliers shining above, marble floors glowing below, voices of wealth and power mixing in the air like heavy perfume. But at one table, the mood was sharper, colder, because a billionaire named Kareem Alford leaned back in his chair. His lips curved into a cruel smile, and in Arabic he sneered. In America they hired just anyone. She looks like she got lost. And the table of powerful guests erupted with laughter, the sound carrying through the golden room like broken glass. Sharp and cruel Olivia Hayes, the young waitress standing beside him, did not move. She held the wine bottle in her hands, her dark hair tied low, her plain black uniform neat but simple, her shoes worn but clean. She looked ordinary, invisible even. Like a shadow in a world of velvet and diamonds, she placed the bottle gently on the table as if it were glass on a shelf, steady and calm, her face quiet, her eyes unreadable, as if she had not heard the insult at all. But then she lifted her gaze, her brown eyes locking with Kareem's, and in flawless Arabic, her voice steady and sharp like a blade sliding from its sheath. She said, "Your words stain you, not me," and the entire table froze. Forks halted halfway to mouths, glasses hovering in hands, the laughter vanishing into silence as if the chandeliers themselves had gone dark. Kareem's smirk collapsed. The color drained from his face, his sharp suit suddenly looking less powerful under the light. His fingers twitched on the tablecloth, and for a moment he was no longer a man in control, but a man exposed, the weight of his arrogance falling heavy around him. His voice caught in his throat, his eyes wide with shock. The other guests stared, some with their mouths open, some with nervous smiles that refused to form. Vanessa, a woman dripping in diamonds, tilted her head and whispered, "Kareem, you're awful." But her little laugh betrayed her hunger for the drama. Ethan, a young tech investor with slicked hair and empty eyes, waved his hand impatiently at Olivia, as if brushing away the silence, muttering, "Hurry it up, sweetheart." But his voice cracked just slightly, betraying the unease in the air. Olivia did not respond, her fingers light on the bottle, pouring red wine into a tall glass, the liquid catching the light like spilled blood. Her movements calm, deliberate, as if she were placing stones in a quiet river. She seemed untouchable, her silence heavier than their words, her presence louder than their laughter. No one at that table knew the life behind her plain uniform. No one knew about the photo hidden in her old sedan outside, the one with a laughing mother holding a little girl on a porch swing. The sun warm behind them, the edges worn from years of being touched by lonely fingers. No one knew how Olivia had stared at it before stepping into this restaurant, her thumb brushing the frame, her eyes steady with a quiet promise before closing the glove box and breathing deep, preparing herself for the kind of night she already knew was coming. Not the words but the weight. She always felt it before it arrived. Kareem tried to recover, his laugh forced, brittle, like glass under pressure. He leaned closer to his friend Marcus, a hedge fund man with a fake tan and fake smile. And in Arabic he whispered, "She probably knows no more than a camel." And again the table tried to laugh, clinking glasses half-heartedly. But the sound rang hollow now, nervous and strained. Olivia continued to pour, unshaken, her wrist steady, her face blank. Vanessa giggled again, though her eyes darted nervously to Kareem, as if testing whether she should keep laughing. Claire, a real estate heiress with earrings sharp as knives, leaned forward and said loud enough for all to hear, "Honestly, who let her in here? She's practically invisible." And the table tittered again, nods spreading as though Olivia's plainness was a crime, her lack of diamonds a wound to their pride. Still Olivia did not falter. She adjusted a glass by a single inch, her fingers precise, her silence pressing harder with each second. The table grew restless. Kareem raised his voice now, eager to claw back the power slipping from his hands. "Hey waitress, you probably know nothing beyond clearing tables, right?" he barked. The table chuckled weakly, Marcus leaning in to whisper, "Watch me make her blush." Kareem grabbed a rare bottle of German wine, a vintage with a name twisting like knots. and held it out, his grin returning with false strength. "Read it," he ordered, his voice sharp, tossing the challenge like a stone into a still pond, expecting her to sink. Vanessa shook her head, her pity as fake as her painted lashes. "Oh, honey, just admit you don't know," she said with mock sweetness, her voice dripping like poison, dressed as sugar. The others leaned in, smirks ready, glasses waiting. Olivia took the bottle, her hands steady, her eyes scanning the label. The silence in the room growing tight, every breath heavy, every glance fixed on her. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, the moment stretching like a string pulled to breaking. And then she opened her mouth to speak. The bottle sat in Olivia's hands, its label long and twisted, German letters sharp and difficult for most to pronounce. The table leaned forward, waiting for her to fail. Kareem's smirk grew wider as if he had already won, but then Olivia's lips parted, her voice calm and steady, clear as water flowing over stone. "Weingut Keller Riesling Trockenbeer Nasals Rheinhessen 2018, she said in perfect German, her tone precise, her accent flawless. And then she added softly, "From vineyards near Stein, limestone soil, small harvest, rare and valuable." And the silence that followed was heavier than the chandelier above them. The wine critic Harold, a wiry man with glasses low on his nose, cleared his throat and leaned closer, his voice breaking the silence like fragile glass. "She is correct, every detail," he whispered, and his words echoed louder than laughter. The table shifted uncomfortably. Eyes darting, Kareem's face twitched, his smile faltered, and though he forced a laugh, it was thin, brittle, desperate. Others stared, some with narrowed eyes, others with forced grins. The game was no longer fun. The prey had teeth. Javier, a Spanish investor with sharp cheekbones, leaned forward with a skeptical grin, his voice smooth, impressive. "But let us see if she can handle something real." And in Spanish he asked her a question about the wine regions of Rioja. His tone mocking but curious. Olivia tilted her head, her face calm, and in flawless Spanish she replied, her words flowing like a river, describing the soil, the grapes, the weather of the region, her accent natural, her sentences smooth. And the table went still again. Javier's grin vanished. His glass trembled slightly as he set it down, his pride shrinking before their eyes. The tension was thick. Like a rope stretched tight, Vanessa giggled nervously, twisting the diamond necklace at her throat while Claire leaned in, her voice sharp, her earrings flashing in the light. "This is nothing. A trick. A party trick," she said, and in French she added cruel words, calling Olivia a servant dressed in borrowed dignity. The table laughed weakly, clinging to the insult, like drowning men to wood. Olivia's eyes flicked to Claire, her gaze steady, her voice cold, yet graceful. And in perfect French, she answered, "Yes, the glass is clean now. Would you like me to polish her manners too?" The words sliced like a knife hidden in silk. The table gasped. A few stifled their laughter. Claire's smile froze on her lips. Her hand trembled as she lifted her wine, her eyes wide and uncertain. The air in the room was no longer safe for arrogance. But Daniel, a venture capitalist with slick hair and pride louder than his voice, leaned back, smirking as if he could not be beaten. "Bet she cannot even pronounce my last name," he sneered, spelling it out slowly in Greek, mocking her like a child. "Kazintziidis." The letters dragged across the table like stones. The guests chuckled. Waiting for Olivia to fail, Olivia set the wine bottle down, her hands steady, and in perfect Greek she spoke his name, Kazantzidis, her tone smooth, her pronunciation exact. Then she added softly, like the singer, and Daniel froze, his smirk dying, the bread roll in his hand suspended halfway to his mouth, his cheeks flushed with sudden shame. The table fell silent again. The mocking grins crumbling. Every word Olivia spoke shifted the balance. Every language tore at their pride. But Kareem was not finished. He leaned forward, snapping his fingers sharply, his voice rising with false confidence. "Repeat what I say," he demanded in Arabic. And then he spat out a vile phrase, cruel. Words about women, meant only to insult and degrade. The table laughed again, nervously this time, their eyes flicking between Kareem and Olivia, waiting for her silence, certain she would not understand. But Olivia stood still, the chandelier, light glinting off her silver watch. Her face calm, her gaze unshaken. Then she lifted her head, her eyes locking with Kareem's, her voice steady. And in English she translated word for word, exposing his insult to everyone at the table. You said women are only good for serving. And staying silent, her tone sharp, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. The table froze once more. The laughter died instantly. Vanessa's fork clattered loudly against her plate. And silence pressed against their skin like a weight. Olivia did not stop. She continued in flawless Arabic, her voice colder now, her words deliberate. Your words stain you, not me. And Kareem's face turned red, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the tablecloth, his eyes wild with anger, his pride crumbling before his guests. Marcus, his hedge fund friend, looked away, his tan seeming pale under the light. The room felt smaller, air heavy. No one dared to speak yet. Claire, desperate to restore her place, leaned forward again, her earrings shaking, her lips curved in false confidence. Oh, come on, it is just a trick, she snapped. She is still a waitress, still pouring our wine, her words sharp, meant to cut deeper. She held up her glass as if commanding Olivia. This is smudged. Clean it properly this time. Though the glass was already spotless, Olivia took the glass. Her movements calm, she wiped it slowly with her cloth, her eyes meeting Claire's just for a heartbeat. Then she held it up to the light, her voice quiet but strong, and in French she whispered, It is clean now. Would you like me to polish? Your manners too. The table gasped again, sharper this time, some covering their mouths, some glancing nervously around the room. Claire's smile cracked, her hands trembling as she reached for the glass. The room felt like it was breaking, their arrogance slipping through their fingers. And then from the end of the table, a quiet voice spoke, low and firm. Richard, an older man with silver hair, who had been silent all night, leaned forward, his eyes sharp, his words heavy. I remember now, he said. She is not a waitress, she is Olivia Hayes. The name hung in the air like thunder. The table went still as Richard's words cut through the silence, his voice calm but heavy, his eyes never leaving Olivia. She is not a waitress, she is Olivia Hayes, he repeated, and the name settled like thunder across the golden room. Forks paused in midair, glasses untouched, the laughter long dead, the weight of recognition pressing against every guest like a storm. Vanessa leaned forward, her diamonds catching the light, her lips trembling as she whispered, Olivia Hayes. Who is that? Her voice small, almost lost, but Richard did not hesitate, his voice steady, his tone sharp. She was a senior interpreter for NATO. She sat in crisis rooms where words decided lives, 12 hours straight, translating, guiding leaders, her voice carrying through fire and war. She saved lives with nothing but her words, and his eyes stayed on her as if to say, I remember. I saw it myself. Gasps rippled around the table, some guests leaning back in their velvet chairs, others staring at Olivia as if seeing her for the first time. Ethan, the tech bro, muttered nervously, NATO, come on, she is lying, she is just some app junkie with a good accent, his laugh forced, brittle. But no one joined him this time. The words hung hollow in the heavy air. Olivia did not argue. She did not explain. Her hands were steady as she set down a tray, her face calm, her eyes unreadable, her silence louder than their disbelief. But inside her mind memories stirred, echoes she tried to keep buried, and suddenly she was back in a dusty office, 20 years old, headset heavy on her head, her voice steady as she translated orders while soldiers moved outside, gunfire cracking in the distance, her heart racing, her throat dry, but her words unbroken, guiding teams through chaos, saving lives with sentences, pulling men back from death with nothing more than a voice. She blinked, The memory fading, the dining room returning, chandeliers glowing, velvet chairs creaking. But the weight of her past still pressed against her chest. She brushed her fingers over the silver watch on her wrist, the same watch her mother had given her before that first mission. The one that had ticked through nights of fear and days of fire, always steady, always reminding her to stay strong at the table. Vanessa shook her head, her laugh high and shaky. "This is ridiculous, a NATO hero serving wine, please." But her eyes betrayed her unease. Her fingers twisted her napkin into knots. Javier, the Spanish investor, leaned forward, his voice curious now, less mocking. "If it is true, why are you here? Why would a woman like you choose this life?" His question floated across the table, unanswered. Heavy Olivia carried a stack of plates toward the kitchen, her step steady, her face calm. But in the doorway, a young server named Mia stopped her, her tray wobbling in her nervous hands, her voice low. "Why do you let them talk like that? Why do you not fight back harder?" Her eyes wide, confused. Olivia rinsed a glass at the sink, her movements slow, and answered softly, "They are not talking to me. They are talking to themselves." Mia frowned, not understanding. But Olivia dried her hands, her watch glinting in the light, and walked back into the dining room, leaving Mia staring after her. The towel clutched tight in her hands back at the table. Karim sat stiff, his jaw locked, his eyes wild, his pride wounded but not dead. He forced a laugh, loud and hollow. "If that is true, then what is she doing here? A hero living off tips? Is that what we are meant to believe?" His voice strained, desperate to regain control. Marcus, the hedge fund friend, nodded quickly, eager to follow, but the others remained silent, their eyes fixed on Olivia, as if waiting for her answer. Olivia paused by the table, setting down a pitcher of water, her face calm, her voice soft but steady. "I am here because I want to live as a normal person, not as a tool of war," she said, her words simple, her tone even. And then in flawless Arabic she added, "True strength does not need to be displayed." The words rolled across the table like fire. The silence that followed was not just quiet. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the skin, heavy, unshakable. Richard raised his glass, his voice low but firm. "That is true nobility," he said, and a few others nodded, their faces softening, their arrogance cracking. But Karim's jaw tightened, his fingers twisting his napkin, his rage boiling under the surface. He was losing control of the room, his pride slipping through his fingers like sand. That had happened. The heavy doors of the restaurant opened. Footsteps slow, deliberate, echoing across the marble floor. The guests turned, their eyes widening, their voices dying in their throats. A man walked in, tall, calm, his suit understated but expensive, his presence heavy as stone, his gaze sweeping the room like a storm about to break. Olivia did not turn at first. She poured another glass, her hands steady, her face calm. But her eyes flipped briefly toward the doors, recognition flashing for a heartbeat. The table watched in silence, hearts pounding, because even before he spoke, even before his name was said, they knew who he was. James Hayes, her husband, a man whose name carried weight in boardrooms and backrooms alike, a man whose presence alone could silence an empire. The guests stared, frozen, as James walked slowly toward Olivia, the air thick, the tension sharp. And Karim's smirk vanished completely, replaced by something else, something darker, a shadow of fear that even he could not hide. The doors of the restaurant closed softly behind James Hayes, his footsteps slow and steady on the marble floor. The air in the golden hall shifted as if a storm had entered. The chandeliers above seemed to glow colder, the velvet chairs no longer soft but tense. Every guest at the table froze, their eyes wide, their voices gone. The name itself carried weight, James Hayes, the man whose business empire stretched across continents, a man whispered about in boardrooms and feared in negotiations, a man who could move cities with a single decision. Karim's face drained of color, his jaw tight, his fingers twisting the napkin on his lap. He tried to force a smirk, but it faltered. Marcus leaned back, his phone slipping from his hands. Vanessa's diamonds shook against her chest as she fumbled with her glass. Ethan's fork clattered loudly against his plate, the sound sharp in the silence. Claire shrank into her chair, her earrings trembling as she lowered her gaze. None of them had expected him. None of them had wanted this moment. James did not rush. He walked with calm strength, every step echoing like a drum. His eyes steady, his face unreadable. And when he reached Olivia, he stopped beside her, his hand resting lightly on her arm, his touch soft, his presence heavy. He said nothing. He did not need to. The silence around him was louder than any voice. The table trembled beneath his shadow. Olivia did not look at him right away. She finished pouring the glass of wine in front of her, her hands calm, her movements steady. Only then did she lift her head, her eyes meeting his. Something passed between them, silent, unspoken, but powerful, the kind of understanding that needed no words, the kind of bond that could not be broken. The guests watched, their hearts pounding, their pride crumbling, their fear rising. Kareem tried to laugh, loud, hollow, desperate. So what? The mighty James Hayes comes to rescue his little waitress. His words bitter, his tone sharp, but his voice cracked, betraying his fear. His eyes darted nervously to James, searching for weakness, but found none. James simply looked at him, calm, silent, his eyes steady, and Kareem's laugh died in his throat, his smirk melting into silence. Olivia turned her gaze to Kareem, her voice soft, clear, steady. "I need no rescue," she said, her words simple but sharp. And then she added in Russian, "Power is not in shouting. Power is in silence." The words struck the table like iron. Daniel, the venture capitalist, flinched, his face pale. His pride shattered. Vanessa's hand shook as she placed her glass down too hard, the sound ringing like a bell. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Olivia's eyes, his phone trembling in his hands. The weight of Olivia's presence pressed harder with every word. And the guests could no longer dismiss her, yet they kept trying, desperate to cling to their old power. Ethan leaned forward, his voice loud but unsteady. "Talent or not, she is still a waitress." His words sharp but weak, and Olivia's eyes flicked to him, her face calm, her voice quiet. And in Japanese she replied, "Shoes can be plain, but the path walked in them can change the world." Ethan froze, his smirk gone, his mouth opening but no words escaping. The table murmured uneasily, the arrogance of the room draining away like water. Olivia's memories pressed again, not as nightmares but as truths. She saw herself at 22, in a dark room lit only by screens, her voice carrying through 3 languages at once, her hands shaking under the table while generals argued above it, her throat dry but her words steady, guiding leaders through crisis, her heart pounding, but her resolve unbroken. Those nights had carved her strength. Those years had sharpened her silence. And now here in this restaurant, her presence was heavier than all the diamonds and silk around her. Kareem slammed his fist lightly against the table, desperate to break the spell. "This is still nothing. She is just repeating words. She is still serving us, nothing more." His voice louder now, desperate, angry, but trembling beneath. And Olivia turned, her eyes steady, her voice calm. And in Mandarin she said, "Service builds bridges, arrogance burns them." The words cut sharper than glass. The table gasped. Sophia, a corporate lawyer with icy eyes, froze with her glass halfway to her lips, her face pale. The silence that followed was thick, unshakable. James's hand tightened slightly on Olivia's arm, a signal not of restraint but of silent support. Olivia nodded faintly, her face calm, her presence firm. The guests watched, their hearts racing, their fear clear. Vanessa whispered, "This is madness. Why is she even here?" But her voice trembled, her arrogance fading, her words hollow. The restaurant staff in the background had stopped moving, waiters frozen, chefs peeking from the kitchen, the scene gripping everyone in its hold. The sound of the city outside muted. As if the night itself was listening, Olivia moved quietly, clearing a plate, her steps calm, her silence heavy. The guests followed her with their eyes, no longer mocking, no longer laughing, but watching with unease and fear. Claire whispered to Marcus, her voice trembling, "It is only a game, it must be a game." But even she did not believe it anymore. Her earrings shook as she lowered her gaze to her empty plate. Her pride gone, her face pale, Kareem's jaw worked, his anger boiling but his power broken, his hands gripping the tablecloth tightly. His pride crushed under the weight of silence. James stood beside Olivia, his presence unshakable, his eyes steady, his silence louder than any threat. The guests waited, holding their breath, unsure what would come next, the golden room trembling with tension. And then the doors opened again, footsteps echoing across the marble, another figure entering, tall, sharp, a media mogul named Thomas, his voice booming, his laugh loud. Unaware of the storm he was stepping into, his eyes scanned the table, his grin wide, and he said, "Well, what is this? A little show?" His voice mocking, his presence heavy. The guests turned, hearts pounding. Olivia's eyes lifted, steady, calm, unshaken. The storm was not over, it was only growing.